The king has the royal chalice ready, and the branch has the C-47s all organized. It's time to decode the world stage. And now, back to the King and Branch Show, only on Channel KOK.
Here we go. There it's back.
By the way, that intro really was pretty cool. I really enjoyed the comparison of Polaris to the film reel. That was clever.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've, a lot of time's passed since our last episode, and so we'll be filling in some gaps here with some news stories. So some of these will kind of fall under the category of a dark MAGA segment. However, some of them are simply geopolitical updates and things of that nature. So wanted to start off with the recent new Pope thing. So we did lose a Pope with Francis, and mind you that this is the Roman Catholic Pope. It doesn't represent the Orthodox Church, but after his passing, a new Pope was elected, I guess, by the conclave. And so in the interim between that time of the passing and the election, Trump released some photos on his social media. And if you want to, can you show those maybe just whenever when you can?
Yeah, I have this one, which is a memed version.
Now, to just be clear, the White House only shared the top one.
Yeah.
As an AI generated image. I think the bottom one you said was a dude on Twitter. Shout out to America or whatever.
Yeah, Hidden America did it. Yeah, it's kind of dark here, but yeah, it's
like a dark Pope version of it.
Yeah, it's like a dark Pope. It's like
but anyway, and then there's the other with the orange smoke.
Yeah.
So, so to get back to the story then. So the headline reads, "They can't take a joke. Days after Trump defends viral AI Pope photo. Pope Leo is chosen." Well, Leo's an interesting name because although there is some historical context, we here at Channel KOK always see things through that astrological type lens, right? So I can't help but think the King of Heaven kind of vibes.
Lion of Judah kind of.
Yeah, all that stuff, Mufasa, so on and so forth. So can you share the one last image that relates to this story, and then I'll just continue with the article.
Yeah.
Feeling grown up and worn out? Adults these days are so busy, they forget how good it feels to just be a kid again. That's why we made Nostalgia Drip. Now with that timeless kid feeling, Nostalgia Drip brings back endless energy for play. Zero worries, staying forever young at heart.
Snore, little citizenships! From Goy Toys comes SnoreQ, who delivers products of obedience. Watch as he teaches you to dock your rights and flow with the currency of Admiralty Law. Snore!
Illuminate or drown!
Flip on his birth certi float and birth your freedoms for the greater illumination. With Snore the Cube, Operation Mind Fun for ages 5.
Tonight on Kingdom Reviews, dive into the mind-bending horrors of disturbing behavior.
MK Ultra Mind Control.
Whoa! Berserker rages and high strangeness at Lover's Lane. Will the teens break free from the blue ribbons? Don't miss it, or face the Berserker within.
Now, back to the show.
And so this is an oldie but a goodie, and we featured this before, I think. So if you take a close look, you can notice that there's an image of Trump there on the second card, which is also tapped, and it shows him seated on North America, which includes Canada in this case. So mind you, this was in 2017. So his throne sits on Greenland, Canada, and the United States. And he's holding the Globus Cruciger and the Scepter, Rod of Authority. And so it's kind of funny to see what all has transpired since then. I mean, this was pre-pandemic and so on and so forth. So And then, you see the Wheel of Fortune down there with recognizable heads of state, changing on the wheel with their associated flags. So you can even tell who they are,
Yeah, really quick, Branch, if I may kind of weave in here a
Certainly.
moment. I was in a online group chat with a bunch of other people talking about current events and the esoteric side of things, and they was mentioning that raw scepter that the Pope has and what it can mean in the occult meanings and all this. And I pointed out that it also looks like a honey dipper from bees. And I thought it was interesting because not only have we talked about bees on our last video when I was talking about Severance with Ryder Lee and how there's all that bee kind of hive mind kind of symbolism, but also in MK Ultra. But also, I noticed that you shared online recently this like bee epidemic. So I think it's no coincidence that there is this kind of bee kind of epidemic thing going on in the world while we have this whole Pope thing going on. So I just wanted to weave that in there really quick.
Yeah, I have a friend that's a beekeeper, and he's speculating on whether or not his hive will collapse this year, and he thinks they'll swarm off and things like that. So there's a lot of theories surrounding it. I mean, personally, I think it's the chemtrails they're spraying in the skies and insecticides that they're using and so on and so forth. People don't understand. They think just spraying it on the sidewalk or whatever is no big deal to keep the weeds out, but just that act of laziness could be responsible for killing on bees. You know what I mean? Because they're highly sensitive, just like amphibians are to toxins in the water. Bees are like our canary in the coal mine for environmental toxins, and so they're usually the first thing to go, and that's indicative of high contamination, specifically in the air. So one of the drawbacks of having an industrialized society is that we do embrace chemicals and manufacturing, and those pollutants do get into the air. And I can't remember the details, but I do know that a while back there was some type of lifting of different restrictions, like regarding the EPA with companies. It was either they focus on water or air. You couldn't have both, or well, why can't we have both? But it seems like air is the one that took the hit in favor of water, which is kind of curious. I didn't expect to talk about this, but I'll just mention that the new Klaus Schwab did step down from head of the World Economic Forum. The guy that wants you to eat the bugs, that guy, he stepped down, and Nestle water, they own a lot of water. It's not just chocolate. They took over as the head of the WEF. So the focus on clean water may have not been a coincidence, right? Because after all, you can't really capitalize on air. So water, however, you can. So I guess that's why they chose to pollute the air and not the waters, because they can actually make money on the water. So we might be a little bit ahead of that there, just talking about it. But so anyway, as the article continues here, so it just discusses here how he posted a photo. Of course, the media went wild, and people thought it, typical Trump fashion, right? But when I saw that, it gave me God Emperor vibes from Dune, when you combine government and religion together. And it reminded me also of that economics, 2017 economics cover. And so when you kind of combine those two, you really do get the God Emperor vibes. And that was even a meme of Trump's, like during his 2016 election campaign era. When he was, being associated with meme magic and all that. So this is not really a new thing. And so I think it's funny how sensationalized it was, when in fact this is actually par for the course. And we know how much he likes golf. So I think it's another reason why Trump's able to connect with the younger generations, is because as old as he is, he's still somewhat hip to meme culture or whatever. And so there's this weird relationship he has with memes. And because we know the left struggles to meme. There's even the meme that they can't meme. So it's like he inherently inherited this, meme mantle, if you will. But anyway, I had a few more links here that I'll cover, and I'm going to try to get through the rest of these kind of quick. So this will be more like a news blitz kind of thing here. I do have a link here on the conclave, and it was a relatively short one. So the papal conclave was held on May 7th and 8th of this year of our Lord 2025 to elect the new pope to succeed Francis, who had died on the 21st of April 2025. Now, mind you, J.D. Vance visited Francis the day before he died, so that would have been 420, I guess. So he visits the Pope, and the Pope dies. And then, so now we have a new Pope. And so there's also a subtle connection to this Trump as Pope thing, because there's like the rumor or speculation, did he have anything to do with it, because this is also the first American Pope ever. So again, another coincidence? Who knows? So it just makes you wonder, because even though you would think that this should be like a neutral kind of thing, heads of state were trying to curry favor, and Macron from France, for instance, was even trying to, push for his chosen candidate. And so there was some politics involved with the selection of this Pope, at least. I mean, maybe they're all like that and it's just not as obvious, but this one seemed more obvious, I think. Now, there's a lot of details surrounding this guy, but for the sake of time, we're not going to go into him very deep. But his name, let's see, I just want to make sure I get it right here. Robert Francis Prevost. Sometimes I don't know how to pronounce that sometimes. But anyway, this was the guy that was chosen. And then they actually choose a name, usually the name of a Pope prior, and he chose Leo. Now, Leo is said to have been one of the Leos prior was said to have created the, I think, the prayer of Saint Michael, or something like that. So a little bit of a historical connection. But anyway, there's a lot of stuff floating around online about this guy. But the main points to raise is that he's the first American Pope. I think he's Peruvian, but also hails from Chicago, which is where Obama has his seat of power. So I even saw a tweet on X about Obama shouting out to this guy. So it's like, well, I don't know if Obama likes this guy. Maybe we should. Maybe we shouldn't. But so it'll be interesting to see what role he plays in the Abraham Accords, or any kind of other peace type stuff, because some of the stories we're going to be covering here in a moment, he might get involved with pretty quick, because the Pope normally does kind of intervene sometimes with things like that, right? So that said, one of the conflicts that's been kind of going on here lately, but may have come to an end already. We're not real sure yet, but there's been a long-standing conflict between India and Pakistan over a small part of land called Kashmir, and this, of course, reminds me of that Led Zeppelin song from way back when. But when it, in the song, it talks about when all things will be revealed, right? It seems like we're in that time of revelation now. So I've always kind of kept my eye on this potential conflict rather, kind of imagining it as probably like a inciting incident, or the, rising action or something in a plot, right? It just seemed like it was, all that tension was there, right? And so they started lobbing bombs back and forth apparently for a few days, and quickly came to a ceasefire, so it seems. But I guess we'll have to just monitor this and see what's going to happen. But both sides declared victory actually, so it's kind of I a matter of interpretation, I suppose. But if they get peace, then I guess they did both win, right? Because but what should be noted about these two countries is that they both possess nuclear arms. India seems to have a more developed military. However, they did seem to struggle carrying out some of their missions. However, they did provide a news conference about, and detailed some of the precision strikes that they made on what they said were, I don't use the word, because of the censorship, but there were people that were committing acts of intimidation, let's say, and so they were targeting them, right? So, but that said, the conflict may have come to an end. But again, how this is kind of related to the Pope story is J.D. Vance goes and visits Prime Minister Modi of India. Days later, war breaks out. So, it's like kind of a coincidence at this point that the disaster seems to follow him, right? Is the D in his name stand for disaster? So, quickly switching to another thing here. I got only a few minutes left here, so I'm going to try to get through these quick. This is an emerging story. I'm sure we've not seen the end of this yet, but kind of a reverse on the immigration thing that we've been seeing. We're now accepting South Afrikaner refugees who are being discriminated against in South Africa. And so that's something I didn't see coming, but I guess it makes sense because Elon Musk is South African, right? So he must be really advocating for these folks. But this is a developing story, so something to just pay attention to. And we'll quickly go to this next story here. Trump's changed his attitude and tone with Israel here lately in terms of their government. However, it seems like he might be siding with the people. So I don't know how true this is, but some of the sentiment is that I would say it's the more left-leaning citizens that are probably siding with Gaza, whereas some of the more right-wing extremist sides.
There's that orange smoke again.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even pick up on that. You're right. How funny. Well, anyway, it's more like the right-leaning side that kind of wants to just wipe them out, right? And so he's kind of gotten involved with this conflict, and he's talking about how he was maybe he kind of, I don't think he's necessarily going to do this, but he kind of flirted with the idea of recognizing a Palestinian state or creating a Palestinian state or liberating Gaza. Like, we don't really know what any of this stuff means. I think maybe his intention is to facilitate the removal of those people and maybe put them in Syria or somewhere else. Like, I don't know, whoever will maybe take them, I guess. But we do know that he snubbed Netanyahu. So I don't think that this is necessarily him snubbing the whole country, but he did say that Benjamin Netanyahu and some of his cabinet ministers were very arrogant, and he did not appreciate their attitude, and he felt like they were trying to manipulate him. And so when you really think about that, the Epstein stuff and everything else, and all the other ways they've been manipulating our U.S. Elected officials, etc. I mean, there might be something a lot more that's not being said, and I find it kind of coincidental that all this stuff's kind of happening at the same time. So it makes me wonder if maybe, because there's some rumors that maybe they destroyed all that stuff and that evidence. So I wonder if maybe Trump just had all of it eliminated to remove the leverage on the people or something. I'm not really sure what's going on there, but this was a kind of a curveball I didn't really see coming. But I would imagine this will have something to do with the Abraham Accords here in the near future, because we know how the government feels in Israel, right? They don't want Gaza there, right? So if there's some type of tension there, I'm not so sure a peace treaty is going to work. And so what we saw was, and this is kind of getting us to my next tab, Trump kind of leapfrogged Netanyahu and went to Saudi Arabia. And he's doing a tour. He has met with the new Syrian president. He's meeting now, or has just met with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. And so we have a White House article here on the strengthening the strategic partnerships for economic prosperity. So today in Saudi Arabia, President Donald J. Trump announced Saudi Arabia's $600 billion commitment to invest in the United States, building economic ties that will endure for generations to come. The first deals under the announcement strengthen our energy, security, defense, industry, technology, leadership, and access to global infrastructure and critical minerals. There we hear the minerals again. Talking a lot about minerals lately. There's too much here to really discuss, but you'll see that there's a lot of chiefs of companies involved. When I hear chiefs and this sort of thing, it kind of reminds me of scripture where the chiefs are gathering and plotting and doing their thing, you know, and they're trying to establish peace, right? And you can find a speech here where he's talking about peace and security. And in scripture, we're in 2 Thessalonians, I think it is. We learn that, they cry peace and safety, and then sudden destruction comes upon them, So again, that hearkening back to that tension that I was mentioning, like some of these participants are not willing, and I don't think that the peace will necessarily be a lasting one. So the key here would be to note if they start talking about a 7-year peace treaty or anything like that, that would be big red flags. Because according to the scripture, that peace treaty is interrupted at the midpoint, which is like 3.5 years. So, and his term did just start, and I didn't think that he really had enough time to do all this stuff, but we see how quickly everything's going. So maybe they're also aware of the time, in some sense, because if you look at the timeline with the parable of the fig tree, we got about 70 to 80 years to work with there from the establishment of Israel till today. And earlier this month marked the 77th anniversary of Israel. So we're getting into that 3 years to 80. So it all kind of lines up in a way, Of course, there's all those people that want to say, oh, you can't predict the day or the hour or anything like that. Yeah, but we are told to look at the seasons, and we can know the season, right? So I feel like what I'm trying to say is the season is things are ripening, right? Yeah. And the last story is a story on which we won't be covering in detail because this kind of segues into the next segment. But we did discuss network states maybe in the past. I'm not sure, but here it is in the flesh, in the concrete, I should say. So SpaceX has announced that they have turned their South Texas launch site into a city. So kind of like along the lines of the Umbrella Corporation vibe, where Raccoon City was a city created and ran and operated by Umbrella, and all their employees lived there. That's kind of like what we're seeing with these network state things, where corporations become their own government. And this was definitely a surprise to me. I did not know that this was going to happen, because I haven't really been following this topic closely. This was just something that kind of intrigued me. And then all of a sudden, boom. So we might start seeing more of these, like with Amazon and some of these other big companies. But Anyway, I wanted to end my segment there. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to take this down because to kind of what I wanted to say really quick about your segment before we switch over to the King segment is that my mic muted it there. But yeah, so we're talking about these corporations starting in cities and getting into government domain and everything. That's technically America is America Corp. So there is presidents there, right? Jordan Maxwell with all the law of the sea stuff, right? And all that. So it is and of course, all the smart city talk and everything. So there is definitely something going on there, which we can do. Get more into in another Dark Maga kind of technocracy.
You did just remind me, though, just to be a brief comment. Back in the earlier campaign era, like the 2016 era, and during his administration, then he did start this initiative for 10 smart cities across America, and all of the places that we've seen these natural disasters occur, they had like minerals under them, or they had plans for smart cities and things like that. So I think what we're seeing that where they're destroying these cities and then building these smart cities, and it's becoming kind of like that Starbase thing.
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of promote our previous video, again with Ryder Lee, I talked about Severance, and that whole kind of show is like them kind of creating this like underground corporate society.
Thanks for tuning in to Channel KOK.
The middle path is Christ's way. The cross unites all worlds.
Connect to your center.